ChowDownChou or random gaming, depending on what you're watching.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ChowDownChou MMA Show, episode number 3. The only podcast where you can hear the word Chow twice in the title. That will never change. We will forever be the only podcast with two Chows in the title. Now, today, this is the third edition of the ChowDownChou MMA Show. And I thought this was the perfect time to do it because we have two fight cards coming up in, I believe they call it UFC Vegas. I mean, they're holding all of their upcoming cards in Vegas, so I don't really get what's the point in calling it UFC Fight Night Vegas. That sounds stupid. Anyways, they're calling it UFC Vegas, and besides from UFC Vegas, we have the upcoming UFC 250, headlined by Amanda Nunes. Like how I pronounce that, Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. We have that card coming up as well, and we also have a bunch of news headlines that are coming up in the MMA circle regarding John Jones and Francis Ngannou, Conor McGregor, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, and Colby Covington. And so I thought this would be the perfect time to do a preview of the upcoming two cards, giving you my breakdown and my predictions of the upcoming two cards, while giving you some quick takes on some of the news headlines that have been flashing up and coming up. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to start with UFC Vegas, UFC on ESPN 9, I think, headlined by Tyrone Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Now, I'm just going to go through some quick hits in the prelims and in the main card, just fights that I think deserves a little bit of attention, but not too much. Good fights that you should look out for. I'm just looking at the card right now. Jamal Hill versus Cleason Abreu. Jamal Hill, fantastic fighter. Had a very impressive fight in the Contender Series. It's one of the fights I remember. Definitely check him out. Crazy KO power and a very fascinating backstory. And another fellow Contender Series alum, Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez, coming off a very impressive finish of Tim Means, who is always a tough customer. So that's going to be a good fight. D-Rod versus Gabe Green. It's going to be a good fight. Definitely, I would check out that fight. And then the main event on the prelims, Antonina Shevchenko, the sister of the Bullet, Valentina Shevchenko, versus Caitlin Chikagan, who is a former title challenger. And Antonina is one win away from really breaking into the upper echelon of the division. And I think this could be the fight that sort of makes or breaks both women. Caitlin Chikagan is looking for another win that reestablishes her spot amongst the top contenders, and this will definitely help her do so. As for Antonina, she's never reached that kind of status before, but this is definitely the chance for her to show herself, for her to establish what she can do in the top half of the division, and maybe someday fight for a title shot. That'd be insane. Anyways, those are some of the prelims quick hits. Now let's go on to the main card. A lot of Contender Series talent on this card, actually. Brock Weaver, the crazy man, Native American Brock Weaver versus Roosevelt Roberts. That's going to be a good fight. I love watching Brock Weaver fight. He looks like if Post Malone looked even more ridiculous and is a cage fighter. So I would love to see that fight. I think that's going to be a good fight. Mackenzie Dern, always appreciated her jiu-jitsu game a lot. Came off of a loss against Amanda Hebas, I believe, but you know, she can definitely fight her way back into the top echelon of the division, especially since she's so young in her mixed martial arts career. She hasn't taken a whole lot of damage. So this fight between her and Hannah Cifers, she is a heavy. Mackenzie Dern is a heavy favorite in this fight, but Hannah Cifers is a tough customer, and I don't know if this is as lopsided as the odds maker makes it seem like. But I am betting on Mackenzie Dern on this one. As for Brock Weaver versus Roosevelt Roberts, I'm going with Brock Weaver. Maybe it's personal bias. I love him. And Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlisle. To be honest, I don't really know Billy all that well. I know Spark Carlisle from his nickname. He's like the Danger Ginger, some stupid shit like that. Anyways, Spike Carlisle, a dangerous fighter, really good on his feet. Excited to watch him fight. It's a little bit of a pick'em fight. I don't know too much about the fighters. I'm not gonna go into a lot about who will win, but because I like Spike a little bit more, I'm gonna go with Spike Carlisle. It's a habit. I always call him Spark Carlisle because Spike Carlisle sounds a lot like Spark Carlisle. Anyways, Spike or Spark, it's a stupid name, but he's a great fighter. And the co-main event of the night, Blagoy Ivanov, one of the toughest human beings alive. Every time he fights, the announce crew will talk about the story where he had like you stabbed like a ridiculous amount of times, somehow recovered and became a cage fighter. And if you look at his fight against Derek Lewis, he got hit with some bombs that would turn other heavyweights' lights off. Never went down. So a great fighter in Blagoy Ivanov, very durable against the streaking Augusto Sakai, who came off a couple of big wins. Now Sakai, we know, has the ability to knock people out, but we also know for a fact that Blagoy Ivanov can take a shot. Now, if you look at Augusto Sakai's record, he's coming off of wins against Marcin Tybura, Chase Sherman, Andre Arlovsky, especially the split decision against Andre Arlovsky. That's not really the top half of the division. But you look at Blagoy Ivanov. He just finished fighting against the Black Beast, who is ranked like 5 or 6 in the division. So I think this is the chance for Augusto Sakai to really establish his place amongst the elite heavyweights. But again, Blagoy Ivanov is a tough customer. And if I was a betting man, I would go with Blagoy Ivanov just because of the experience that he has and the durability that he has shown. And we don't really know how Augusto Sakai reacts in the deep waters at the end of the third round when your opponent is really gassed and isn't really giving up yet. We don't know how he reacts in those decisions and those situations. So I'm gonna go with Blagoy Ivanov. But then again, all these contenders start somewhere. If Augusto Sakai can come in there, maybe knock Blagoy out when no one has been able to do that in the heavyweight division, he can definitely propel himself into the top 15 and maybe get a big fight against like a Black Beast against say Junior Dos Santos, someone like that, or pair him up with Jairzinho Rosenstruck if he wins this fight. Although I would love to see the Jairzinho Rosenstruck Alistair Overeem rematch. I would also Augusto Sakai is a very exciting prospect to watch that I'll be watching for as well. Now, not that memorable of an undercard, but a great main event in Tyrone Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, a lot of people don't understand just how dangerous he is. First of all, his best skill set probably lies in his submission grappling. Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a world-class jiu-jitsu, can submit anyone. But also, he can knock people out. We've seen it over and over again. He's got heavy hands. Knocked out Damian Maia in his last fight in Brazil. He is no joke. I think people, but then again, I think people also underestimate Tyrone Woodley. People put too much of an emphasis on his last fight against Kamaru Usman, where he admittedly looked awful and didn't win a single minute of the fight. But look at his record, man. He is undoubtedly still one of the best welterweights to ever do it. he defended his title multiple times against Darren Till and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He defeated Damian Maia. All of these are top level competition, and he's defeated all of them. We know he has great wrestling abilities. A lot of times he relies on his wrestling abilities, but he also has hands. I feel like they're actually two very similar stylistic fighters, where Tyron Woodley has a very heavy set hands, heavy set feet, goes on a wrestling offensive, but can knock you out with a single punch. Same with Gilbert Burns. He'll take you down, he'll submit you. That's his bread and butter, but he can also knock you out. So a very intriguing stylistic matchup with two very similar styles. Gilbert Burns right now is trying to punch his way into the really the top echelon of the welterweight division. Tyron Woodley, if you look at the UFC's ranking, he's still ranked number one. He's the number one contender in the welterweight division. So if Gilbert Burns beats him, he's in the top five. He's fighting Jorge Masvidal. He's fighting Colby Covington. You know, he's fighting Kamaru Usman even. It's insane, man. So this is his chance to really make a mark on the welterweight division. As for Tyron Woodley, people are doubting you, Tyrone. People are saying that Tyron Woodley's too old. He looked too awful in his last fight. He just doesn't have it in the gas tank anymore. That's what Jorge Masvidal said in his interview on Ariel Helwani show. He doesn't have it anymore. He's not gonna go out there and give a good performance because he's too old. He's not motivated enough. He's doing all his rap stuff. He's never going to be in the top echelon again. Go out there, Tyron Woodley, and finish Gilbert Burns and show the world that you still have what it takes to get another title shot. You know, I think the best path for both men right now is to win this fight, go on to fight another top level competitor like a Leon Edwards or someone, and then if you win that fight, title shot. So I wouldn't call this a title eliminator. A lot of people have been saying that. I would say this is a title eliminator. As for the person who wins this fight will probably get into a title eliminator with another top level competition. Like Gilbert Burns wants to fight Colby. If he wins this fight against Tyron, let him fight Colby. Same thing with Tyron Woodley. If he wins this fight against Gilbert Burns, pair him up with Colby Covington. There's a lot of animosity there. It'll make for a great fight, great stylistic matchup for both men to fight Colby Covington. And that could be the title eliminator once Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal face off. I think that's the most logical plan of action that I can see. And there's more news surrounding Masvidal, Colby, you know, the whole welterweight picture. Throw Conor McGregor in there. I'll cover that a little later. But for now, this is a very, very intriguing fight. Gilbert Burns versus Tyron Woodley. If I had to pick someone, I would go with Tyron Woodley. I think he hasn't lost that much. Like he said, I truly believe his night out versus Kamaru Usman was sort of a fluke. It was like a one night thing. Look at his performances against Darren Till, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He is a killer. He is a really, really good fighter. I don't believe Gilbert Burns has what it takes to step into that spotlight yet. I don't know how he'll deal with a 5-round fight. I don't think he's just quite ready enough to take that big step up in competition. So I'm going with the chosen one on this one, Tyron Woodley. I would say, I don't know. I don't think he's going to submit Gilbert Burns. I'm going to go with unanimous decision by dragging Gilbert Burns into the 5-round deep waters and winning the fight via decision. But yeah, so if you look at UFC Vegas, Gilbert Burns versus Tyron Woodley, it's not that impressive of a card. It doesn't have a lot of action, you know, a lot of big names on the card, but I would definitely tune in for the main event and the co-main event. Great 2 fights there. Like I probably wouldn't pay for a subscription if this fight was on the dock. But nonetheless, first fight back in UFC Apex, first fight back in Las Vegas. Finally, sports are back in the fight capital of the world. Maybe that would draw some eyeballs. But you know what? I'm just lucky to have fights. I'm just happy to have fights, so I can't complain. Dana, thank you. You know, even though the third fight on the card is probably two names none of the casual fans has ever heard before, but so what, Dana? Just keep putting on fights, keep pumping them out. I love it. So now I want to talk a little bit about UFC 250, Nunes versus Spencer. When I first saw the card, I had one word on my mind: weak. It was a very, very weak card. You wouldn't normally see Amanda Nunes and Felicia Spencer being the main event of a milestone pay-per-view like UFC 250. However, that's the world we're in. Coronavirus, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's a lot of high stakes fight on the card. But in terms of the top level action that should be headlining the card, a little bit weak. I would have wanted another title fight on UFC 250. But we have to settle for Nunes versus Spencer alongside a ton of fights in the bantamweight division that could very much decide the future of the bantamweight division. Now, I'll cover that a little later. Again, I'll start with the prelims and the early prelims. I'll give you a little bit of my thoughts on some of the fights that are happening, some exciting fights that I think you should look out for. First of all, Jussier Formiga, Alex Perez, the veteran Jussier Formiga, trying to get back into the win column. I think this is his time to really establish himself back into the top echelon of the division. So I'm going to go with Formiga on that one. Alex Caceres, Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper, the youngest fighter on UFC roster, a great grappler against journeymen like Alex Caceres, who's always been like a gatekeeper for like really young talent to break into UFC. We'll see how Chase Hooper handles that one. Really good fight between Cody Stamann and Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher making a quick turnaround after getting that knockout win. That's going to be a pretty action-packed fight as well. Brian Kelleher, I'm really looking forward to him really breaking into the rankings. So I'm going with him to winning that fight in the featherweight. I think it's the bantamweight division. Anyways, the biggest name on the card on the prelims, sadly, is Ian Heinisch, who is coming off two straight losses, I believe, versus the streaking Gerald Mearshart, who just came off a win, making a pretty quick turnaround as well by fighting Ian Heinisch at the top of the ESPN portion of the card. That'd be a good fight. I'm gonna go with Ian Heinisch because I think he has gotten off to a couple of fluke decision losses. So I think he can get back into the win column with this one. Gerald Mearshart, with all due respect, a great fighter, a veteran. I just don't think he will ever break into the rankings and that sort of a thing. So I'm gonna go with Ian Heinisch on that one. And now, without further ado, going into the main card. Sugar Sean O'Malley is coming back. Probably the biggest name on the card. Fighting Eddie Wineland, who is I don't know if he's ranked now, but formerly ranked fighter in the division. So I think, first of all, Sean O'Malley, always exciting, undefeated to watch, always exciting to watch him fight. Lots of star action. That's going to be a great fight. I think Eddie Wineland is a veteran in the division, has a lot of experience, good everywhere. We'll see how Sean O'Malley handles that. I'm loving the activity from Sean O'Malley after he fought on the Connor Cowboy card. I've been dying to see him get back into the octagon, so we'll see how he handles a really top-level opponent like Eddie Wineland. I think if he wins, he deserves someone ranked in the top 10. It's time to push him. UFC has a star on their hands. All you have to do is push him after he wins. They're both in the bantamweight division. If Sean O'Malley wins, you pair him up with like the loser of a Sun Sao Garbrandt. I think that makes the most sense. You know, give him a top level competition, and we'll see how he handles that. But this is what I'm talking about. A lot of bantamweight action on the card. 5 matches on the main card. 3 are in the top 15 of the bantamweight division, starting with Sean O'Malley and Eddie Wineland. Now going into the next match, Anthony Rocco Martin, who has been kind of a journeyman in the UFC, has wins and losses, coming off a very, very razor thin decision win. I forgot against who, but I was watching that fight. It was really, really close. Fighting Neo Magny, who just got a very dominant win against Li Jingliang. First of all, Li Jingliang is very underrated. I think he's a great fighter, and one day he'll be in the top 15 of the welterweight division. Neo Magny dismantled him. And Anthony Rocco Martin came off a very razor thin decision win. Hasn't really had a lot of impressive wins in the UFC. So I'm going to have to go with Neo Magny on this one. I think it's time that he reestablishes his place amongst the welterweights as that sort of a cowboy Cerrone, kind of a gatekeeper 10 to 15 dude. That's always been Neo Magny. And I think he's just finding his groove back, getting back to his rightful place. And who knows, maybe this extended break has rejuvenated him, and he might one day go on to fight a really top level competition. If Neo Magny wins, you could give him someone like a Robbie Lawler, someone who's really looking to get back into the win column as well. So, I think that would be a great fight. Neo Magny, Anthony Rocco Martin. I'm predicting Neo Magny with a decision win. We'll see what happens. Anyways, so keep going on to the next fight. Aljamain Sterling versus Corey Sandhagen. This is a pick'em fight. Two top-level bantamweights who's good everywhere going at it. A little bit of animosity on social media. I have no clue how this fight will turn out. Great fight, Aljo and Corey. I think this could it's not very, very much. This is the title eliminator. This is the next title challenger. Whoever wins this fight is the next title challenger for the bantamweight title. So whether that be Aljo or Corey Sandhagen, this is a very important fight, a massive fight for both men. If I had to pick, I honestly couldn't pick. If you look at the odds maker are as confused as I am. This is a pick'em. I have no clue who wins this fight. I have no clue. I don't know. In my heart of heart, I'm going to go with Corey Sandhagen because I've seen Aljamain Sterling climb all the way up to the top and then sort of fall back down. Now he's worked his way up again. Just based on prior experience, he might do it again. That's why I'm going with Corey. But you really don't know. This is a fantastic fight for tune in. So tune in for that one. Now, moving further up the card, and another massive fight in the bantamweight division is the ex-champion Cody Garbrandt, who just came off of a loss against Pedro Munoz, facing Rafael Sunsao, who is a mainstay top 5 level opponent in the bantamweight division. Sunsao has run into a little bit of a trouble recently, on a little bit of a skid, losing to a couple really, really high-level opponents like Marlon Moraes, who went on to challenge for the title, and Corey Sandhagen. So, of course, we know Cody Garbrandt losing twice to TJ Dillashaw and losing to Pedro Munoz. We'll see how he adjusts his game plan. I still think Cody Garbrandt has what it takes to, again, be champion one day, so we'll see how that goes. Rafael Sunsao, with all due respect, is a very respectable veteran, good everywhere, but I think if you look at the interviews that Cody Garbrandt has done, it looks like he has made the necessary adjustments to get back into the title picture. So I think Cody wins by knockout. He reestablishes himself as a legitimate threat in the bantamweight division. Sunsao, I really don't think this loss would do too much to him. You can pair him up with I don't really know, someone like I don't know. Someone like the loser of Corey Sandhagen, Aljamain Sterling. Something like that. Like, he'll have plenty of good fights in the bantamweight division. He'll still be there. He's still a tough, tough customer. But I'm going with Cody Garbrandt. Alright, so now I'm on to the main event. Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. Now, Felicia Spencer fought Chris Cyborg. She fought Megan Anderson. She fought Zara Farn. Won all of those fights. It's well, she didn't win against Chris Cyborg, pardon me, but she was very competitive against Chris Cyborg. So we know Felicia Spencer is a tough customer. All right, she's no joke on the ground. She can finish you off on the ground and pound. She can finish you up with submissions. She's strong. She's big. She's fast. However, she's fighting Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes beat Holly Holm, Chris Cyborg, Jermaine Durandamy, all in dominant fashion. I think there's a classic fight. She's one of the champions in the UFC, sort of like a Valentina Shevchenko or like a uh, Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes. I'm trying to think of the men's champion. If there's a champion that's sort of unbeatable, like Amanda is. Can't really think of any maybe like John Jones. She's sort of in that range where she's a GOAT already. She's one of the greatest of all time, no doubt. And it's just hard to convince pay-per-view buyers that any challenger would actually win a fight against her. This is the same thing. If you look at all the promo packages, it's, oh, Felicia Spencer's ready to shock the world. She's facing the GOAT. All the promotions on Amanda Nunes. I think it's going to be a quick TKO on probably ground and pound round 2. It'll be over. I don't think Felicia Spencer stands a chance. However, prove me wrong. I'll be watching. Really not much to say. I predict Amanda Nunes wins. You know what? I'm actually really interested on what the betting lines are saying. Of course, Amanda Nunes is I believe, the biggest favorite on the card. Doesn't surprise me. I think this is a wash of a main event. Who knows? Maybe Felicia Spencer, because how tough she is, can make the fight interesting, make the fight competitive. I don't know. So, whatever. It's not that great of a fight. It's a little, it's not good enough to headline a card like UFC 250, but it is what it is. Coronavirus, blah, blah, blah. Fight Island, whatever. Now, all right. Now, next up, I want to talk a little bit about some of the news flashes that has been coming up. Some of the news headlines have been popping up because I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of news going on these days regarding the welterweight division and the light heavyweight division. John Jones, Francis Ngannou. All of these news I'm going to break down for you. I think they're super interesting and I want to talk about them. Number 1, my favorite fighter. I know this might be a little bit of controversy here, but Colby Covington. I like his act. I like his fighting style. He's a damn tough human being, and I love his shtick. Be the bad guy. Let everyone hate you. He announced his departure from American Top Team. And he's calling for a fight against Kamaru Usman. Now, first of all, I don't think he necessarily deserves a rematch. I think the next title challenger should definitely be Jorge Masvidal. So I don't agree with Colby there. In terms of his decision of leaving ATT, I know there's a lot of drama between him and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Dustin Poirier, Jorge Masvidal. They couldn't see eye to eye in the gym, and it's causing all this drama. So if you look at his interview, he said, I basically left the gym. Now I'm training with my own training partners because I don't want to create an unnecessary burden for the owner, Dan Lambert, which I think is a very legitimate reason for him leaving. I don't like the fact that he caved in to all the haters, as he will call it. You know what? Why can't he train? You shouldn't put your personal judgment ahead of what the gym should be about. If he's a part of your gym, it doesn't matter if he talks shit about you. You gotta be the bigger man and just say, you know what? We're gym partners. Whatever. He's still my friend. He's still my gym partner. Whatever. But they complained, and now Colby Covington's gone. Whatever. I don't know how this move will affect his training. He hasn't come out and talked about any of his training partners yet. But now ATT is a Colby free zone. There's no MAGA hats anymore. Whatever. But I would have loved if Colby remained at ATT because he was a mainstay for a lot of years. But whatever, it is what it is. It's already it's done. So he's still one of my favorite fighters, and I think he should face the winner of Gilbert Burns versus Tyron Woodley. I think that makes a lot of sense. And that essentially serves as a title eliminator while Jorge Masvidal goes on to fight Kamaru Usman. Now, in terms of Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal went on Ariel Helwani's show and talked about how Kamaru Usman asked for an absurd amount of money, how he's not a draw. That's why the fight is not happening. And now he's thinking about fighting Nate Diaz again. First of all, I would love to see Jorge versus Nate Diaz. I think I'd buy that pay-per-view. I'd love to see Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. I'd buy that pay-per-view for sure. First of all, I also agree with Jorge. Kamaru Usman is very, very boring, very cringy to listen to. Not a great promoter, and has a pretty boring fighting style. So I don't think he deserved whatever absurd amount of money he's asking for as well. And as for him talking about him wanting to fight Conor McGregor, you're out of your mind. First of all, Conor McGregor's not fighting you. You're primarily a wrestler, and you're boring. Like, dude, he's not fighting you. You won't help him sell pay-per-views. There's nothing there. You're trying to create something, and you're doing a bad job at it. And your fighting styles is not that exciting to beat a Conor McGregor fight. So that's off the table. Just stick to what you have. All right, Kamaru, Marty. Just, negotiate to the best of your abilities and take whatever UFC is willing to offer. Because at the end, I don't think you have a lot of bargaining chip here. Jorge Masvidal is the draw. Fighting him should give you plenty of money. Don't be greedy and make the fight for the fans. That's that. That's that for the welterweight title picture. As for John Jones versus Francis Ngannou, Dana White came out and said John Jones asked for a crazy amount of money. That's why they didn't make that fight. But if I was John Jones, the most dominant champion in the history of the UFC, going up to heavyweight to fight a guy who can knock me out in 3 seconds, I'd ask for a lot of money too, Dana. So, use this as an opportunity to sort of assess the star power of John Jones and Francis Ngannou, assess how many pay-per-views this fight would bring in, how much money you would make off of it, and decide if the money John Jones wants is worth it. If it's not, make John Jones versus Jan Blachowicz. I don't think that hurts anyone. It just robs the fans of a quote-unquote fantasy matchup that I think has to will only happen if there's a lot of money on the table. So Dana, it's time for you to do the work. If you don't think it's worth it, whatever. I'm not particularly keen on seeing that fight either. So if you don't think it should happen, don't make it happen, Dana. I fully support you, Dana. Anyways, I think it's a perfect opportunity to find out just how much John Jones is worth. Make the fight, give him an absurd amount of money, and maybe you have one of the most memorable fights on your hands. But we don't know. But I'm good with or without the fight. I'm just saying, Dana, you should try your best to make it. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's not that worth it. Anyways, now going on to my last topic of the day, Conor McGregor, proper 12 himself. Who will he fight next? Kamaru Usman says, hey, fight me, I'll give you a title shot. I already explained why he wouldn't fight Kamaru. Anderson Silva just came out and said, how about we fight in a 175 catchweight bout? And he said, oh, I accept your challenge on Instagram. First of all, Conor always talks shit on Twitter and Instagram. It's never the truth, all right? It gives you maybe a glimpse of what he's thinking. It doesn't offer you the truth. Do I think Anderson Silva versus Conor McGregor could happen? I actually think it's a very intriguing matchup, and I wouldn't mind seeing it. If Dana wants to make that fight, make it a spectacle, last fight of Anderson Silva's career, do it. I would love to see Anderson Silva use his last couple of fights to establish he's still very good in the middleweight division and make another run. But we all know it's at the twilight of his career. It probably wouldn't happen. So if Dana wants to make a catchweight bout with Conor McGregor, just a spectacle of a fight, GOAT versus GOAT, whatever you want to bill it as, I'd buy it. I think it's actually a good idea because right now Conor McGregor is sort of stuck in limbo. Tony Ferguson will take months before he can fight, so he's probably not going to pair Conor up with Tony Ferguson. Gaethje's matched up with Khabib. That's already set. Jorge probably matched up with Usman. Unless you want to face, you know what? If Jorge fights Usman, another fight you can make for Conor is Conor McGregor Nate Diaz 3. That would be a fantastic fight, even better than Conor McGregor Anderson Silva. So make that fight instead. But if Kamaru Usman wants to hold out, Jorge Masvidal ends up fighting Nate Diaz. This all leaves Conor in a very weird position where there's no real good options. Like, you're not going to put him against someone like a Dan Hooker, like someone who's not that marketable. You want him to face a top star. You want the money. So what I suggest is Conor and Nate Diaz 3, if that's at all possible. If that's not possible, make the catchweight bout. I think that's very interesting. Make the Conor McGregor Anderson Silva catchweight bout. I think that's actually not bad of a fight. Anyways, that's my plan for Conor McGregor. And I already gave you my breakdown for UFC Vegas and UFC 250. If you agree with me, drop a comment, drop a like. You can listen to this wherever you get your podcast. I know it's not as long as these MMO shows typically are. However, that's not that much action going on. And I mainly wanted to preview the upcoming 2 cards and also give you some of my thoughts on some of the bigger issues in MMA today about regarding, Kobe Covington, Kamaru Usman, the welterweight title picture, John Jones, Francis Ngannou, all of those things. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I will try to do an MMA edition of the show right after UFC 250. Maybe that's a little too far away from now, but I will upload a immediate reaction and the breakdown of the fights that happened in Woodley Burns. I will definitely do that, so stay tuned for that. And that's all. Hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe. Let me know if you agree with my thoughts or not. Let me know who you think Conor McGregor should fight. And I will see you all in the next edition of ChowDownChou. Bye.